Anybody else that I missed, just thanks for being here. VJ, anything else you wanted to jump in before we start rocking and rolling?
No, not at all. Christine, if you did want to say something, I want to open it up to you, of course.
Yes, I just wanted to welcome everyone to this this meetup. Thank you for joining the Build a Data Visualization project with no service in 2 hours with NIM. Kintone and JavaScript are co-hosting this visualization workshop. I just want to introduce myself. I'm Christine Chin. I'm actually a project manager with Be My App, and I've been partnering with Kintone on meetups, and so I'm glad to have you guys here. And I just wanted to do a quick intro of our players here. So for Kintone, they have 20 years of combined coding experience. We have Will and Genji, who are from Tokyo, on the line also. And then we also have Nim, as you just met. He's from the Bay Area. He's a Kintone evangelist promoting teamwork and low-code solutions. They are here today to give back and help out the next generations of coders. Nim will be the speaker for tonight's workshop, and Will, Genji, and myself will be answering your questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to post them on the chat section and we'll be sure to answer them. And while Nim's presenting, please keep yourself on mute so you don't interrupt him. And thank you for joining tonight.
Thank you so much, Christine.
Yeah, go ahead, Nim.
All right, thanks a lot. So again, I just want to thank VJ for the platform, and Christine and Genji and Will. These you guys are in the background doing your thing and making it all flow, answering people's questions. Folks, you don't know how lucky you are to have these people on your team tonight. So really, if there's any questions you have, just fire away. And if I'm not going to be able to answer them, any one of these fine people will. Let's get into it. So, hey, I'm Nim, and I'm Kintone's technical evangelist. I started my technical evangelism journey by the engineering part of my technical evangelism journey by going through a program called Hack Reactor, which was a 14-week boot camp. You may have gone through a boot camp. If you did, you know that it can be pretty grueling. If you didn't, I'm sure you had your own crucifix to go through, or maybe you're still going through it. In any case, keep going. And if you did it, great work. I was hired by Kintone a few months after I finished my my program, and I started off as a sales engineer. What is a sales engineer, you may ask? Well, if you ever need to buy software and you call up a company and you say, hey, I want to buy your product, and you're talking to a salesperson, you will eventually get into a conversation about your requirements. And if your requirements are sophisticated enough, the sales rep will say, hey, those are some really good questions. Let me bring my technical advisor on the phone, and they'll be able to help you see if this is a great fit. I was that guy, the technical advisor. In the industry, they're called sales engineers. You may also hear them known as solutions engineers. And I was pretty good at it. I really love it. I was promoted. I became the lead sales engineer. Then I ended up managing a team of 7. And after about a year, I shifted into this technical evangelism role, where I get to share with folks the possibility of our platform and also really assist them in, in their own growth and development, and also solving their own challenging business problems. So that's how I got here. And today we're going to be talking about how to use Kintone to very quickly spin up a data visualization project. So everyone's going to walk away with a kernel of a project that they can start iterating on. Now, why are you I want to make sure that the right butt is in the seat. So if you are a front end developer who wants to spend less time setting up your back end stuff, you want to concentrate on the UI, the UX, this presentation is for you. If you have other reasons for being here, cool. Go ahead and pop them in the chat. And if you are in the wrong place, any one of these fine people answering the questions will tell you, hey, you know what? Thank you so much for clearing your space, but this isn't for you. I do have a hunch though that everybody here is in the right place. This is what we're going to talk about today. First, I'm going to give you a quick introduction to Kintone. The reason why I'm doing that is because it's really important to get the context of how it all works before we really dive into the nitty gritty and do the fun stuff. We need to be on the same page about how to get to where you need to get to. Why do things look the way that they do? And so that's why we're going to talk about Kintone first. And in the process, we're going to create a Kintone app. We'll talk about what an app is at that point in time and how to make one. And then we will be using the AmCharts library, which is a data visualization library. We will be spinning up an AmCharts visualization on Kintone, and then we will call the REST APIs from Kintone. After we do all of that, you'll then have the basics within 2 hours to build on it from there. I also want to temper your expectations. What you're going to come out with is like a foundation. It's a building block to iterate on. You're not going to have like a really beautiful and fine-tuned final project. That's not the intention of this of our time here today. So I want to make sure that you're calibrating your expectations appropriately. All right, so let's talk about Kintone. What is Kintone? Well, Kintone is a no-code, low-code cloud platform for teams to easily share and collaborate on their data efficiently. So what do I mean by that? Well, actually, no, you know what? Let's not talk about that for a moment. What I mean, so it's a platform where you can whether you're very technically savvy, which if you're on this call, you either are or are intending to become technically savvy, or you're a total newbie, or maybe you're even allergic to technology, and maybe you have folks in your lives that are allergic to technology or close to it. Kintone allows you to track the stuff that you need in the day-to-day business operations very quickly and easily, and then to also talk about it. So you've got your data and the conversations about your data in one place. Now, the main building block in Kintone is an app, and you can imagine an app as like a spreadsheet or a table in a database with more power, more flexibility. You can do a lot more cool stuff with an app than you could do with the same amount of ease in a spreadsheet. So what you need to know about apps is that they're very easy to create. You can see it over here in the in this little running animation over here. What we're doing is you could literally drag and drop fields from the left-hand side of the page to the right-hand side of the page to create the fields that you want. No coding necessary. What's good about that for you as a coder is that that leaves you more time to spend on the more creative aspects of your project. And what's also neat about apps, and the reason why they're more accessible and more interesting to us than Excel spreadsheets, is that they are customizable with client-side JavaScript. So you could create a JavaScript file on your computer, you can upload it into Kintone, and then Kintone will execute that code on your browser. And that code is a really what it allows for is a very big sandbox to play in. Now, I touched briefly before on no-code and low-code platforms. What do I mean by that? These are industry terms. If you're familiar with them, great. If not, great. What you need to know about a no-code platform is it's a platform that's designed with business users in mind, non-techie people, that allows them to build stuff to do their job easier. And a low-code platform is geared more toward developers to help them do the coding that matters and speed up the stuff that doesn't. So you don't need to get in a terminal or in a code editor for everything. These platforms allow you to speed up your build process by making some of the more what's the word I'm looking for? Just some of the building stuff easier to do without needing to code everything out. The reason why it's low code is because there is some code that's necessary in order to build out what you're looking for. Now, no code and low code is a part of a spectrum. Kintone is actually both a no code and a low code platform. So if you're a business user, you're allergic to technology, you spin up an app real quickly, you get it to do what you need it to do, so you can track what you're looking for, and you can collaborate with your teammates on those things like, I don't know, invoices, sales leads, job applicant tracking, lots of stuff. But as a developer, you can spin up these apps really quickly and then iterate on them with the much more interesting JavaScript customizations, or if you have more exacting requirements, it allows you to build, to customize with that client-side JavaScript. So what does this have to do with no servers? Well, because Kintone is essentially acting as like a lightweight database with a GUI on top of it, you don't need, a server running in AWS or a cluster, or, I mean, you can basically turn Kintone into the server that runs your database. You can concentrate on the front end work, and then you can also use Kintone's GUI to create your databases really quickly. Okay, so we talked about high level what a Kintone app is. Let's go into a little bit more detail. So I mentioned a Kintone app. You can imagine it as a spreadsheet or a database with more flexibility and with more power. And so you can very much the same way like a spreadsheet or a database is just a tool that you can fill with any content. It's the same thing with a Kintone app. You can create an app that tracks, your activity with prospects and customers, expense reports. You can create an app that tracks your inbound marketing leads. There are a lot of options, and even if you're not in the business world, but you want to use Kintone to track your to-dos or board games or like the movies that you've seen or what you've had for lunch, it's the same deal as a database. Now, at this point, I want to make sure that everybody has signed up for a free Kintone developer license. And the reason is that in order for you to follow along with this project, you got to make sure that you've signed up and you've got this license. This license is good for a year. It gives you your own, what we call a subdomain, which you can, it's an environment for you to build apps on. If you have not yet done so, please sign up for a free Kintone developer license. And if you have, then what I would really appreciate you doing is just in the participants tab on Zoom, go ahead and raise your hand if you've already done this. That'll help me know how long I should be kind of pausing on this page to, allow people to take care of business. So again, in Zoom on the participants tab, there is a button called raise hand. Please raise your hand if you have already signed up for a free Kintone developer license. Okay, thanks a lot, AK. Keep your hand up, please. Luigi? Thank you. Joey? Great, 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 great. Okay, so I'm gonna take a minute, or I'm gonna take about 2 minutes. Folks, please go ahead and sign up for that Kintone developer license now, so that we can all follow along together, and I'll give you guys some hands-on work. And then when you're done, please raise your hand.
Sorry, yeah, I'm just going to say it's only going to take a minute or so to fill out the form, and you'll get the email with the Kintone developer license.
Thank you, Will. VJ, do folks have the ability to do anything else besides raising their hands? Can they mark yes or no, or go slower or go faster? Do you have those buttons enabled?
I'm not sure. So the other thing that I was trying to figure out here was like that feature, but that you were talking about. But I think to keep it simple, maybe just like have people enter comments in the chat, because I think that might be the best way to kind of get people. I know I have a Kintone license as well. but I was trying to figure out how to raise my hand, and I got
Okay.
stuck with that.
Folks, if you don't know how to raise your hand, if you're stuck over there, and if you have any other questions, if I'm going over something that you don't understand, please type that in the chat. Now, to raise your hand, what you're going to do is Zoom has this menu bar. It's this black menu bar that it's either docked to the top or the bottom of your screen. And there is a button on there that says participants. And what you'll do is you'll click on that button, participants, and then you'll see a list of all, however many of us there are. And you'll see a button over there on the bottom of that popped up window, and it'll say raise hand. That's how you raise your hand. Now, to lower your hand, once you hit raise hand, the button will turn into lower hand. Okay. Okay, great. We'll take another minute or so.
Hi, can you hear me?
I sure can.
May I ask a question?
You absolutely may.
Okay, my name is Alan. I want to engage a little bit your sales capability. Can you sell us on the platform? Is it running on mobile? Is it restricted to your container? Is it like, because I mean, the freebies is nice, but I want to know what is around the corner, how useful it would be, and what is your expectation? This is obviously not an open source project.
That's right. That's right, Alon. So I'll do my best to speak to that briefly. I'm certainly happy to give you like a more targeted, bulleted version during the break. But just very briefly, Kintone is available on mobile as well. It's primarily targeted toward business operations cases. Like you've got teams, you've got groups of people who are managing workflows. They're tracking whatever they need to track. Could be invoices, could be sales leads. If you're a developer, maybe you're tracking sprint progress, and you need a platform for communication as well. So in lieu of searching over hundreds of messages on Slack or over email, and having a whole bunch of files in a whole bunch of different places, what Kintone really enables you to do is to track all of that information and have all of those conversations in one organized place. And yes, we've got like feature parity on a mobile app. Does that answer your question?
Yes. I don't want to spoil the party, but I would, if you don't mind, how much it costs.
Sure. Yeah. So Kintone is the licensing scheme is $24 per user per month, with a minimum of 5 users, and it's geared again toward teams that want to not just put their data somewhere, but also make it easy to collaborate on their data. Comparable price points would be like Salesforce, which is priced at like $60 per user per month. So on the scheme of things, it's fairly inexpensive in this space.
So since this is an all-in-one package that it encompasses, the like graphs and stuff that it's capable of generating for us is based on the data that we provided. So whatever we basically feed it, it'll basically give us different options for what we can visualize. I mean, that kind of how that works? Or
yeah.
Is that kind of like, because you said it's kind of like a sandbox, right?
That's right. That's right. I'm basically giving you guys like a bunch of Legos to play with today. Right.
Sounds sweet, man. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm very surprised that we're going into the sales stuff today. I find that in these developer meetups, people are very like not interested. But in any event, happy to talk about it. If you want to talk about it more, we can do it online. I also, again, want to be respectful. For many coders and developers, they want to be as far away from the sales stuff as possible. So I want to honor that, but also at the same time, make sure that I get your questions answered. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah. And Alon, does that answer your question too? I'm going to go ahead and take that as a yes, Alon. Okay, folks, if you have not yet signed up, then too bad. You're buckle up. You're going to be in listen only mode, I suppose. For everybody else, thank you very much. And also, why not at this point, anybody who is participating, but just go ahead and raise your hand anyway. What that's going to help me do is see, kind of give me a bead on how many hands I should be looking for to make sure that we move on to the next segment. So if you haven't raised, everybody go on and raise your hand again. We just lowered them all. Everybody who's listening, go and raise your hand. If you don't raise your hand, I'll know to not pay attention to your your speed as we go through today. That's the impact. All right, great. I got a pretty good sense in it. So everybody else who's here, maybe you're recording this session, maybe you're in and out. That's okay too. I appreciate it. Okay. I'll go ahead and lower all these hands. Let's move on. If you haven't yet logged into Kintone, please go ahead and do that right now. It'll be, https:// whatever you put for your subdomain .kintone.com, and then you'll log in. And the details of your domain and your login information should be available to you via email. I hope that at this point everybody has received that information. If you haven't, just go ahead and drop that in the chat. Genji and Will take care of you. The first thing that you see when you log in is going to be this blue screen that'll allow you to choose between the administration and Kintone. This is a screen that the administrators will see. And you'll click on the Kintone button on the top left, and then you'll be taken into a page where you'll see your portal. Congratulations, welcome to Kintone. What you see front and center is the environment that, you and your users will see when you log in. Just kind of some brief navigational elements over here. There's this place where you can put in announcements that which you as an administrator can edit, and everybody would see those announcements. They'll see the same announcements. To the right, there's an area called spaces, and you can imagine a space as like a fenced in way to organize conversations. So marketing people tend to want to track the same basket of things and talk about the same basket of things. So you might create a marketing space and put marketing apps in it, like survey results or incoming leads or upcoming events. That would all go in a space. Underneath that, you've got the apps, and apps are the foundation of Kintone, and they're going to be what we're going to be using as a building block to play with today. What I'd like you to do is create your first app. And to do that, what you're going to do is you'll be in that apps pane, that little rectangle, and you'll click on the plus sign. That's going to take you to a page where you can create your first Kintone app. And what we're going to do is we're going to create one from scratch. So go ahead, click on that plus sign at the right-hand side, middle of the page, the apps section. And then you'll be taken to the new app page. You'll click on that button that says create app from scratch. Now from there, you've got this page in front of you, our form builder. And that's where you can name your new app and drag and drop fields. What I ask you to do at this point is just simply drag and drop a text field and a drop down from the left-hand side of the page to the right-hand side of the page. The text field is going to be in the second column. That's all the way at the top. It says text. And then the drop down field is also that second column, about 5 or 6 down from there, where that red arrow is in the animation just right now. And what you can do is you can hover over these fields, and in the top right section of the field, there'll be this gear wheel. you'll click on the gear wheel and it'll bring you to the settings for that field. And that's when you'll want to change the name and add some options over here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add a board game DB. So we'll add a field for name, and we'll add a drop down for type. And then we can go ahead and put in some options over there. Maybe abstract would be a type, and area control is a type, and drafting is a type. And that'll be enough. Once you do that, you can click on that green save button on the left-hand side of the page. And once you do that, then you can look at the top right-hand side of the screen. There's a blue button called Activate App. This is going to basically move our app from the development environment. It's gonna skip the staging environment, and it's gonna move it straight into what we would consider production. All right, once you've created your first app, go ahead and raise your hand.
Might take a few minutes, so no need to rush.
Yeah, could you repeat the 3 categories again? It was abstract, area control, and what was the other one?
I believe it's drafting. Is that right, Genji?
Drafting. Okay. Sorry, I'm juggling 2 computers. I got
No
you guys on
worries.
one computer and working on the other.
I totally understand. And then don't forget to raise your hand when you're done. So great. Joey, John, Day, Quasar, Luigi, VJ, Ryan. Excellent.
Since it has like the built-in like communication availability, does it kind of have like a built-in like Jira board or like Trello board that you can use for like teamwork?
Oh, you mean like a Kanban board?
Yeah.
There is not a built-in Kanban view, but actually that would be like a cool project. Like if you wanted to tackle as like as part of like a customization.
Yeah.
There's in our Japanese market, we have a Kanban plugin that looks pretty cool. But yeah, it's certainly doable.
Okay. Sweet.
Yeah.
It just seems like something to ask because I mean it's pretty awesome what it looks like so far. I mean I like how it's pretty practical. I kind of like the drag and drop. It makes things really easy.
Man, do you want to come to all of my presentations?
Dude, I'm down. Send me the email, bro.
I'll send you a personalized invitation. Yeah, it's there's a bunch of different ways to view your data. You can view it as a list, kind of like what you'd expect if we're calling it a table in a database or a spreadsheet. You should be able to see it in a table. You've got a detail view where you can drill down into a specific record, and that's where you'll also be able to talk about it with other people by tagging them. You've also got a native calendar view, and you've got native graph and chart functionality. But what's cool about Kintone, and this is really why we talk about it to folks like you, is you've got what we call a custom view, which is basically just like an empty HTML div, basically, and that you could put essentially anything that you want in there, and hook in some scripting behavior with your uploaded executable JavaScript code. So you can, I mean, hell, Will has made Space Invaders in Kintone. I know he's pretty proud of that. It's cool. Very, very flexible. All right. Thank you very much for all of those who raised your hand. We're going to keep going. Okay, the next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to go into that app. If you haven't done so already, you're going to click on that new Board Game DB app, and you'll be taken to what we call the list view. Okay, now your list view is likely empty, doesn't have any records in it. If you wanted to add a new record, what you could do is, oops, where is it? What you could do is right over here in this area, you've got that plus sign. This will allow you to add a new record. If you needed to go into the app settings, which is where you were when you were doing the dragging and dropping, plus there's some other cool power tools over there. You click on these app settings. What you basically want to know is, your data is going to go here, front and center, and you can edit it inline over here. And if you needed to drill down into a specific record, you would click on these blue page thumbnails. Just another thing really quickly is over here in this blue rectangle at the top left portion of the page, this is where you can select views. Since maybe you've got an events app and you don't need to see all of the events, maybe you just want to see upcoming events, or maybe you just want to see, like, show me, the last rolling month of events. You'd be able to create views that are specific to that. Kintone has some native graph and chart functionality. You could also create native graphs and charts with that, but we wanted to spice things up a little bit for you guys. So we're bringing in an external library, and we're going to do some heavier lifting. Now, I talked a lot about how you can collaborate with Kintone. If you've ever worked for a company where you're like passing, spreadsheets back and forth, and you have, like a version control nightmare going on, or if you're if you're basically using email as like a shared file system, Kintone allows you to just leave hell is the short way to put it. It allows you to get everybody on the same page. If you're tagging someone, they can, if they've configured their mobile app appropriately, they can receive push notifications, or they'll receive an email. It'll bring them into the app. Everything is like all in one place. It's just a lot easier to do the work part of work. It makes it less worky, if I can say it like that. Now, here's the deal with no code. No code limits you to the native features of the platform. It's really, up to the limit of what you can configure. So the benefit of being able to move into a low code environment is we can start doing some much more interesting things. So for example, if we wanted to take the data that we put in and visualize it with a JavaScript library. So actually what I'm going to ask you to do is, no, actually we don't need to do that. My bad. What I'm going to ask you to do is take a short break. Why don't we take the next 10? It's now 7:52. Let's keep going. Thank you all for coming, for making it out to part 2. And what we're going to focus on in this segment is about displaying AM charts on Kintone. So what is AM charts? AM charts is it's a programming library. It's available in a one or more JavaScript files. It gives you access to a bunch of methods and tools that you can use to build really snazzy, nice charts on the fly without needing to like build them from scratch. So you've got all sorts of different kinds of charts that are available. If you wanted to, take a look at, I can't even read that, but this one probably looks like, COVID by state, which is, I'm sure, very interesting, although not a fun thing to talk about. So I'll just point to that and keep moving. But anyway, a whole bunch of different nice graphs and charts. You got a map over here. You've got a word cloud over here. It's pretty flexible. And typically, the way that you would use AM charts is you would load it up as a script. So however you do that, if you're running like, NPM, you want to include it in your packages. If you are referring to it in a script tag in your HTML file, and then basically you've got in your HTML file some kind of a div that the script behavior hooks into. And what you do is basically in your JavaScript file, you'll call out that div ID, and AM charts will automatically, based on your behavior, based on what you put in, it'll basically put all of the information that you're telling it to in that div. And what you'll also need to do is define, not just tell it how to behave when it hooks into that div, but you also need to give it data that it can then process to show whatever it's going to show. So that's typically how you would do it with front-end JavaScript. So you've got 3 parts, right? Part 1, well, technically 4 parts, right? Part one is create a hook on the HTML side. Then the JavaScript, you point to the file location in some way. You define the chart details, and then you define the data. In Kintone, it's going to work a little bit differently. You have various different places to hook into Kintone elements on the platform. So we're going to use Kintone, Kintone's API for that, basically. As far as reading the libraries, Kintone has a particular way of uploading or linking to external libraries. We'll also use the data that's inside of Kintone. It's really the chart creation that we do in Kintone. So all that other stuff can just kind of fade into the background. And we're going to create this kind of a chart. Genji and Will, I'm really sorry, I just forgot the name of this kind of a chart. I think it's a forced directed graph. And what you see is each one of, nailed it. All right, memory. Each one of these circles represents like the size of something, and we get to say how big or small those circles are, and then I believe we can actually have them interact with each other. You'll notice that we are going to take up space between the in your list view, between the that little blue rectangle where you can change your views, and your data, which you'll see underneath it. So that space is currently not occupied, but we're going to be putting something in there. Okay, so how do we add AM charts for Kintone? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new Kintone app with some pre-populated data. Now to do that, we're going to give you a CSV. Go ahead and download it from this, this link. Please note, I believe all bit.ly links are case sensitive. So you'll need the G and the D and the V to be uppercase. Everything else will be lowercase. And once you download that file, you're going to click the plus sign on the portal where you could create an app, which you did in the first segment today. And instead of creating an app from scratch, there will be another button over there that'll say create an app from CSV. Create from CSV. Then you'll click continue. At this point, I want to pause and I want to make sure everybody's downloaded that CSV file. I believe Genji has also just dropped it in the chat. It's the Marvel Cinematic Universe Films.csv. And again, what you'll do is you will add a new app. You will create from CSV, and then it'll start taking you through some steps. First, it'll make sure it'll ask you to verify that the data is scrubbed and squeaky clean. We've already done that for you. You can just hit that checkbox that says check all. And then you'll hit that blue button that says continue to upload screen. When you continue to the upload screen, that's when you can drag and drop that CSV onto that browse button, or you can hit browse and you can find it. And then once you do that, oops, it'll what Kintone does once you've uploaded your CSV is it takes a quick look at it and it says, hey, what type of fields do you want corresponding to each one of these CSV columns? It's a totally valid question to ask. And Kintone does a pretty good job of guessing. You can leave it as is. It's fine. We don't need to make any changes. But what you'll notice, what you should note is that if you ever need to upload CSVs or Excel files into Kintone, you can pretty reliably, like if you need to add a date field, there are certain conditions in which radio buttons or drop downs get automatically created. Over here, everything that's default is fine. So we'll click on that blue button that says convert. And once we do that, we'll see the we'll see that app show up in our portal, and then we can click on it and we'll see the data there that was already in the CSV that we had uploaded. So we basically did two things at once. We created a new app from a CSV, and then we automatically populated data into it. Okay, let's start getting into the interesting stuff. No, you know what? Before we do, thanks, Will, you read my mind. Please, everybody go ahead, raise your hand. Let me know you're following.
Yeah, so there are two steps here. One, you need to download the CSV file. And then next is you need to upload it to Kintone.
Great.
Just give me 1 second. I had to like email it to myself to download since I'm on another computer.
Gotcha.
Yes, there's multiple ways. One, I posted the direct GitHub link, as well as I also uploaded the actual file to Zoom chat if anyone is having difficulty with either one.
You're the man.
Yeah, what jacked me up is I got my Zoom on my main computer and then like the Kintone on a whole nother computer. So when I'm following along with you, like it's kind of like,
Yeah, then it's going to be the short link.
Now you guys
the
know.
struggle is real.
Yeah. Yeah, this is why I split my computers into 2 different ones.
Oh gosh.
Just real quick, folks in the chat are asking, what should we name our new app? And I missed that. And you didn't miss it. I just didn't tell you. You can name it whatever you'd like. The data set is Marvel Cinematic Universe films. So you can call it movies. You can call it Marvel movies. You can call it Iron Man is greater than Thanos. Whatever you'd like.
Documents.
Ren and Stimpy. You could absolutely call it Ren and Stimpy. We should make a data set on the most popular Nicktoons.
We should.
I am a fan of Doug. That was my all-time favorite Nicktoon. Was Doug. Rocket Power. Yeah, I mean, I could see you making a case for Rocket Power. It was solid. Thanos did nothing wrong. Yeah. Luigi, it's a really great title for an app. Thanos did nothing wrong. Well, I think we should
convert.
What's that?
Should I hit convert?
You'll hit convert, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Will, we should make an app on our internal Kintone environment called Thanos Did Nothing Wrong.
Just in case anybody searches for that.
Yeah. Well, no, it'll show up as the top app for a little while before anybody creates other ones.
Of course.
All right, folks. All of you who raised your hands, thank you. I'm gonna lower all hands. Thanos 2020, make the universe great again. All right. That's what I'm talking about. Man, you guys are fun. Open invitation for you to just join any and all of our future sessions. We do sessions on, how to call REST APIs. We've done a session on like what are promises in JavaScript, how to do promises. Not with JavaScriptLA. So, but like, I don't know. Vijay, I think it's okay that I'm like cross-pollinating over here. Please tell me if I'm like overstepping my bounds.
No, that's fine. Feel free to, again, talk about anything you'd like. You're the star.
All right.
Start of the show.
Great. Cross-pollinating. All right. We've got a survey that we'll ask you to fill out at the end. I believe you can put in your email address on there. Is that right, Will?
Yep, that's correct.
All right, so you put your email address on there, and we'll keep you posted with like new stuff that we do. It'll inevitably include Kintone. Like, sorry to kind of cut to the chase. Like it'll be cool coding stuff that we do on top of Kintone, and it'll be a lot of fun to have you join us. All right, so how do we add the JavaScript libraries to the app? If you've already skipped ahead, great. If you haven't, you'll click on your new app. You'll go into the app settings. Remember, that's that gear wheel at the top right corner of the page, the one with the white background. You'll be then taken to a page that's got 4 tabs on it. The one at the rightmost side is called App Settings. You'll click on that App Settings tab. And then you'll see 3 columns. The second column, second option down is going to say JavaScript and CSS customization. Go ahead, click on that bad boy. And when you do, This is the money shot right here. So how to upload the JavaScript libraries to your app. Well, you can do one of two things. You can download the files and then upload them. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to link to them. So you'll see in this animation where it's underneath the section that says upload JavaScript for PC. You'll click on where it says add link, and then you're going to copy and paste these 3 links. Now, critically important that you add the links in that order, because this is where you tell Kintone how to handle the execution order. Execute order 66 by first putting core.js as your #1 spot, and then charts.js, and then the following link plugins /force-directed.js. Core and charts, they're going to give us the ability to interact with amcharts. They're more typical methods and functions. The force-directed graph, that's a plugin that we're gonna use. That's a little bit extra. Okay. Go ahead, raise your hand if you've done this. Great day, John, Luigi. Thank you guys. Thank you, folks.
Still typing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I have a question.
Please.
Yeah. How I missed the part. Which part I should do? Add. How can I add the JavaScript library? I'm in the page with add with the CSV 01 Marvel Cinema Universal Film. So should I click all apps?
There should be so are you in the portal? Is that right? You see like announcements, spaces.
Yeah, I'm the portal.
Apps.
Yeah, I'm the portal.
Very good. So you'll now click on your new app, the one that you just created when you uploaded the CSV file.
So that's the okay with the name, right? Okay.
Yeah, the name. Yep. And once you do, on the right-hand side of the page, in the white background, there's a gray gear wheel. Click on that gray gear wheel. And you'll be taken to the app settings. You'll notice, tell me if I'm going too fast, okay? You'll notice there are 4 tabs. There's form, views, graphs, and app settings. And you're going to click on app settings. And once you click on app settings, you'll then be, the page will show you 3 columns. In the second column, the second item down will be JavaScript and CSS customization. You'll click on JavaScript and CSS customization. And then that's the page where you will upload.
Sorry, the computer. So you talk about, I just opened the page. Look, I say the response is very slow. So,
I see. Okay.
Go to the three dot, right? Go to the 3 dot or plus sign.
Nope. Next to the 3 dots, next to the plus sign, there should be a gear wheel.
Yes. Okay.
Click on the gear wheel.
And then, okay. For some reason, this page is response very slow. Probably too many people use it.
It's very weird.
Yeah, very slow. So I'm not sure because my computer or because the system running fine all day, but all of a sudden just slow down. Okay, so I'm on the page. Okay.
Now you should see 4 tabs. There's form,
view. Yeah.
Great. Click on app settings.
Okay.
And let me know when you see 3 columns.
Yeah, I see 3 columns.
The second column, the second one down.
JavaScript, yeah, JavaScript and the CSS customization.
You got it, Jason.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then I have to type the 3 link.
You can copy and paste these links. Genji will go ahead and drop them for you, so you can just. Oh, he already. Genji already has. If you scroll a little bit higher in the chat, you'll add links one by one, and make sure you do it in that order. Thanks, Genji.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for speaking up. I want to make sure that to the best extent possible, we don't lose people. My best pacing is done when you guys communicate with me and tell me that I'm going too slow or too fast. I'm happy to go either way. Okay. Is anybody else having trouble?
I'm good.
All right. We are going to continue. And we're going to do that by adding a custom JavaScript file to the app. So you should have already downloaded a JavaScript file. Genji will provide it for you in the chat if he has not already.
Yeah. Need the file.
There you go. So this file that Genji just dropped in the chat, that starts with gist.github. And Genji just dropped it again over here in the chat. You can download it straight away. So this is a JavaScript file. What you're going to do is you'll download it onto your machine. And then in the same page that you are on, you'll click Add File. And you're going to search for it on your machine and you'll add it and make sure that it is last in the execution order.
Okay.
AK asked a question, which visualization libraries does Kintone support? Could I do this with something other than AM charts? And Luigi, you got it right. You can add any JavaScript file over here within a certain parameter. I mean, like basically, if you try to run something malicious, it's not going to work. But if you're running it for, under normal conditions, you want any kind of library really. You can set up to execute over here. So yeah, high charts is a good example. Terrific, guys. I really appreciate you helping each other out in this chat.
Come on.
Now, once you have uploaded the file, make sure you click on that blue save button. It should be at the top left of the screen. And when you do, this is critical, click on Update App at the top right part of the screen. There's a larger blue button at the top right portion. It says Update App. Click on Update App, because all we've done when we've saved the file is we've saved it, but we haven't pushed the changes. To push the change, we have to click Update App. Which is, oh, I'm skipping a little bit ahead. This is where you'd be right now, updating the app. All of the changes you make will get pushed. And if you've done everything right, this is what you're looking at. So it's this force-directed graph, these little circles that you can drag and drop. And they live right above your data in this app. I also want to just call out that Will has given some other examples in the chat of other libraries that you could use that Kintone supports. This is by no way an exhaustive list. Actually, Will, could you drop our CDN in here so folks, if they really wanted to get excited about what they could put into Kintone? Yeah, so Will just dropped a link that shows you like all of the libraries that we host. Sometimes there are companies that have security considerations. They don't want, they're concerned that if you're linking to some external website that, maybe that site could get hacked and that the code that you're linking to could get corrupted and become malicious. So what we do is we host a whole heck ton of libraries on Kintone.com. So that way, if you're on Kintone, you're linking to Kintone, we're the ones who are managing all of it. And that'll give you some sense of what you could play with over here. I love it, Bulbagraph. They are concerned about security. They should make a native app. Dana, there's a valid point. There is a whole spectrum of security concerns over here. I'll just leave it at like, Kintone is very secure. If you want to learn more, I will point you in the right direction. And I can provide you with an operating and security document But in lieu of that, yeah, there's a spectrum of security that people are interested in. Hey, who called out over there that it sucks?
No, not that. I'm saying, like what I'm doing right now, it's not going through. I'm called out.
No, no
I
worries. How
get
can we
this
help you?
visualization tool to email to myself, right, man? I click this link and I download it, the visualization.js, and then as soon as I send it to the email, every time it attaches, it's only attaching with 1 kilobyte of data. It's not giving me the full file, and I'm like, dude, that sucks.
Isn't the file 1 kilobyte?
I don't know. It's not letting me download it. I'm trying to download it.
I have a
You
quick
can,
I
question.
email it to myself.
You can send the guest link instead,
Mhm.
and then open that guest link
have
in your.
Okay, let me try that.
Genji, do you know how big the file is?
Oh yeah.
Sorry, the file should be very small.
Yeah, that's what I'm figuring.
But yeah, as Will suggested, please type in this bit.ly short link at the computer that you're running the website and the code in. And you could download the whole gist as a zip file. And then from there, you could upload everything directly. So you're not constantly emailing back and forth between the two computers.
All right, let me try that.
Cool. And Luigi just dropped a really valid tip for all of you who are concerned about security when you're linking to third-party JavaScript files. Is you can add the integrity hash checking attribute on the script tag. If that third-party site supports it. And the tip from Luigi for us, Will, if it's not something that we're doing or have plans on doing, is to set up that kind of integrity checking on our side. I think it's a great idea, but I also have no visibility into what that would take on our side. But it's worth a thought. And thank you very much, Luigi, for adding that in.
I'm over this.
All right. How are we doing? Please let me get a show of hands. Are you seeing the visualization? Can you play with it? All right, John, Luigi, Ryan, Ramon, Day, AK, Arlette, great.
Don't understand.
Okay. Jason, Joey, how are we doing?
I'm still not getting this thing right. I get the process.
I can see the process.
Oh, you can see the visualization?
I can see it, yes. Okay, but it's not moving. So
okay.
I can see that one with the table, right? So my question is this. I also try to use the same URL for the for this application. So look like this one is not public, right? So how can I make it public?
I'm sorry, I did not understand the question.
Yeah, my question is this one's the URL on top of like my domain name .kintone.com/k/2.
Yes.
That's the website I created. But
yes.
Look like this one you have to log in, right? It's not a public domain.
That's right.
Yeah, how can I make it public? That's my question.
Oh, that's a great question. So if you wanted to make your Kintone environment public, you got to take a step back and think about Kintone's main use case. It's for internal teams to be working together. So if you want external stakeholders to be participating in Kintone, right. There's a whole bunch of different ways to include them in your environment, depending on the kind of access that you want to give them. You might want to have them, you might want to buy a license to give them a seat. You might want to hook into some of our third-party tools to expose some of the data on a publicly available website. And then there are a few other options as well.
So basically, the Kintone is designed for the internal use, not for the, because for example, like I show the result, I want to publish this result on my website. So that's not Kintone can do.
That's right. You would want to use a third-party tool to expose either a certain a data set or no, so here are a few things that you could do. We've got like third-party tools that you could use that are like configurable, that allow you to expose the data or the graphs and a clickable link. We also have a fully open REST API. So you could pipe the data that you have in Kintone outside of Kintone to anywhere else that you'd want it to be.
Oh, okay. So is the REST API is free or I have to pay? So so I remember people ask about this question.
Yes, it's a freely available REST API.
So we have to pay to get the API?
No, it's a free open API.
Oh, free open API. So I can use the API and to include for the public viewing. Right?
Exactly. So you would pipe the data to. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
Yeah, another question is I also try to log in through my phone. So look like they said the Kintone mobile is available. So you look at, but there's no graphic, only see the table on my phone.
Could you rephrase your question, please?
Yeah, I also do the same thing on my phone.
Yeah.
Right? And then I go to the same URL. And then what I see is just the table. I don't see the graphic.
Oh, that's right. The graph that you created is available in the desktop environment only. You could there is separate because mobile has different elements that it exposes. You can upload different JavaScript for the mobile environment. In fact, if you go back to that JavaScript and CSS customization page, let me jump back to it. What you'll see is over here, even you'll see there's this upload JavaScript for mobile devices. So right now we're working strictly in a desktop environment. That's what it means when it says PC. But you could create customizations that are specific to the mobile environment. I don't believe this graph specifically would be one of them, because I'm not sure that this specific element, that this div that we're exposing in the desktop environment is available in mobile. But the principle of it stands.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be looking through the code later, but for the mobile, you'll be specifying a different div that's for mobile. And since Amcharts is responsive, the graph itself should show on the mobile as well if you set it up for the mobile.
Great. All right, Jas, thanks for doing the work to catch up. How are we doing? Joey, how are we doing?
I'm over this. This shit does not want to go.
All right.
I just thought I was going to download the file and put the file in, but it ain't letting happening, dude. Like, I downloaded this from the link. I even made a new JavaScript file. Then I try to email the file to myself and download the file that I emailed, and it won't let me do that. So now I'm on the other computer, opened up Visual Studio, and I'm writing a whole new file.
All right. Well, if you need any assistance to catch up, go ahead and reach out to Will, okay? All right, thank you. Okay, folks, let's go through the code. This is the interesting part. So we had 3 libraries that we set up at the beginning. Excuse me, that we ran first, that came with the library. The first was the core library for Amcharts. Then there was the library for creating charts. There's a separate one for maps that we would use if we were looking to create maps, but we're not, so we used the charts one. And then there was a specific library that we used for the force-directed chart. Then we added our own chart. And if you open up visualization.js, as I believe Joey has already beat us to, look at that, Joey, you're all caught up. Then this is what we begin to see. And so let's begin to break this down. Now, the first thing that we've got is, you'll notice that there's this Kintone object. This is essentially an object that we hang a whole bunch of methods and events on for you to interact with when you're building your own client-side executable code to run on Kintone. And there is a specific event called app.record.index.show. What that means in English is when the list view page loads, and then what we do is we're going to call a method called getHeaderSpaceElement. The header space element is that kind of blank area that sits in between that blue rectangle and your list of records. That's where we injected the AM chart. And so what we did is when we see the list view, go ahead and get this element, and then create this new instance of this chart. And you'll notice there's this function m4core.create. We're creating this chart, and we're going to hook into the target HTML element space div, and then we're going to tell it what kind of chart we want to inject into that div. Okay. Then we're going to create a series for the chart. You can imagine a series as well, a series is a chart. Like it's a yeah, I think we could just leave it there for the purposes of this session. What you need to know is that if a series is a chart, then if you add multiple series, then the series will sit on top of each other as though multiple charts were sitting on top of each other. We gave the chart some, oh, you know what, let me go back for a second. We gave the chart some properties, like a name, a maximum radius, a minimum radius. So we're controlling the size of these circles. And then we want to log the event into the console. This is for our purposes. And then push some data in there. To push the data in, you'll notice it's actually pretty simple. What we do is we get the data that's already associated with the event. It's event.records. These are the records that are showing up when we enter that list view. And we're just going to map them from the array that they're in when we get them to a new array that has the name and the size of the I believe it's their gross revenue, and gross revenue is represented in a you'll see where we've got record.text.value and then record.number.value. So here's a little behind the scenes for you, okay? When you create a field in Kintone, there's a default, like what we call a field code that works behind the scenes. So when you dragged and dropped that text field and you renamed it, you called it movie title or whatever you called it, the field code didn't change, but the name that the user sees changed. That field code was called text. Then there's a field we've got called I believe it's gross revenue, which is represented on the back end as the field code number. Now it's actually very easy to configure these changes, and you can see over here in the field settings, all you need to do is edit this this little box of this little text over here. You change it to some other field code, and then your code would change as a result. So this is where you make the connection, hooking between the what you can configure in the native Kintone environment to what your code is going to hook into. And then finally, we're going to, thank you. The field code is the identifier for each field represented as a string. That is a much cleaner way to say it, Will. Thanks for adding that in. And then we take our data and we connect it to the chart that we made by calling it, series.data equals data. All right. That was a lot. Any questions? Okay, no questions. Please raise your hand if you are fully caught up. Luigi, John, Quasar, Day, Marlon, Ramon, Ryan. Great.
Yeah, actually, can you summarize what you just went over right now? I'm a little lost as to where to begin here.
Sure. Who's asking the question?
It's Dana.
Dana, thank you. Okay, so let's start with what you understand. Where are you coming from?
All right, so I've got the bubble graph thing, and now what?
You mean like you see the?
Yeah, so I've done.
You've done this?
That. I've done
Okay.
that.
Then we opened up that visualization file that you downloaded.
Okay.
And we started looking at it and understanding how it's doing what it's doing. You can click on the link that Genji just dropped, and you can view the code just straight in the gist.
Oh, okay.
I would also want to point out that the GIST also has the slides as a PDF for when you want to go back or you miss something or use as for your future Kintone projects.
Oh, good call out, Genji. Thank you for that.
Sorry, I was under the impression that there was more to add to the Kintone app in this case.
No, that's it.
Oh, okay.
Boom, done.
Okay.
Yeah, what we just did was we unpacked kind of how did we get this behavior? We waved a magic wand, basically. Here's what you need to know about the way this code works. Kintone triggers Kintone events based on certain things that load or happen. And then what we do is we hook into those events. Instead of using like the browser events, we hook into Kintone's events since they are much more reliable. And then what we're basically doing is once we hit a certain event called show the list view, we identify the target div, and then we create an instance of a chart, and then we define the conditions and properties of that chart, and we create some data, and then we link the data to the chart, and then it's displayed.
I'm sorry.
Sure.
So it's not based on the JavaScript event listener system? Correct.
It is not based on the JavaScript event listener system. Kintone has its own series of native events as part of its API. And there are all sorts of reasons that we've done that frankly, I don't remember all of them. But they essentially have to do with your JavaScript listener events don't guarantee that they will be executed at specific times. And these Kintone events do. And if there's code that you're running that depends on a certain kind of order of page of elements displaying in the page, hooking into the Kintone events will guarantee that those elements will be displayed when you need them. Does that make sense?
Okay, so they're not compatible. You can't make them work together.
You could add because this client side JavaScript code that you're uploading, you could hook JavaScript listener, you could hook behavior into JavaScript listener events over there. There's no prohibition against that. It's just that typically people want to do things with Kintone, and hooking into Kintone events offers a more reliable way of doing that because those events trigger after certain elements load or before other elements load. So you have a much more predictable way of triggering your desired behavior. Does that make sense?
Okay, so it's sort of like a React hook then.
Sort of like a React hook, probably. I haven't touched React since before they came out with React hooks. But that sounds accurate based on the the 3 sentences I read about React hooks in the last 6 months.
I just point out one more thing.
Please.
This is Will here. The other advantage of using the Kintone native events is if you can see on line 3, where it states the event, and after that it shows the words function brackets event, and this event is an object that's being used later on in line 21. It's being used in line 19 as well, so you can check your console for what that event object looks like. But it basically contains all the data that's being shown in the list view. So it has data of each row and the values inside each field of those rows. And for this workshop, we're basically cycling through all the data inside the event object. And then we're taking out just the data that we need, which is the film title and the gross revenue. And we're placing that into an object, and we're pushing that back into AmChart's series.data, which is like the data set that you need to set for AmCharts to show their charts.
Mm-hmm. So it automatically maps CSVs, is what you're saying?
No. You'll convert your CSV into a Kintone app. Once your CSV is converted into a Kintone app, now it sits as Kintone data that you can access essentially in three ways. One, the most obvious way is through the GUI, right? Like, oh, look, there's my list of records. Let me click on them and see them, right? So far, so good. The second way is, through an open API, I make a call to a specific, endpoint, and I say, get me the data on this app, and then you'll get that data, right? The third way is if you're in Kintone running client-side executable code, and you shouldn't need to make a REST API call to an endpoint. It should be available to you and like on hand in some way, which it is. It's attached to this events object, actually.
Okay, so what I heard was that it maps it to some sort of object model on the client side.
That's right.
Okay.
Very good.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question from Luigi as well.
Luigi, is there a maximum amount of data rows given the data row is in the event object according to Will? Huge. I don't know.
Yeah, if I can answer that as well.
Yeah,
is that
go
okay?
ahead, Will. Please.
So the app itself has like a maximum amount of rows you can put in, and I think for the developer license it's 50,000 rows. And for the event object itself, so yeah, I said the event object contains all the data that's shown in the list view. The list view actually only shows a maximum of 100 rows. So if you click next page, if you have over 100 records, then a next page icon will appear. And if you click on the next page, the event object will contain the next amount of rows. And if you're working in a project where you want over 100 rows, there's another way to get all the records inside your application, which is by initiating Kintone's REST APIs. So there's a very easy way to call REST API, Kintone's REST APIs from within Kintone to get all of your records. But we've made it simpler this time, just using the event object. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
For mine, it breaks at 20 rows. How do I fix that? What you'll do is on the right-hand side, AK, there should be a place where you can choose, believe it's the 3 dots. You go to these 3 dots and it'll say like, how many rows do you want to see? And you can choose like 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. Ramon's saying, it looks like the kind of thing where I'd look up your docs for how to set up a visualization like this and make my own file. For example, I could set up my own min radius and max radius. Yeah. Yeah, and we've got plenty of cool projects that you can check out in our docs if you wanted to set up a visualization like this or something similar. Great. Folks, great questions. Okay, any questions? All right, final part of today's agenda is calling REST APIs from Kintone. For those of you who skipped ahead and were asking about cross-origin resource sharing, CORS, this is the time to tune back in. So we talked about public APIs, and we had created our own data set, given it to you as a CSV and asked you to upload it. But if we wanted information from some external API and we wanted to bring it into Kintone, how would we do that? Seems pretty straightforward, right? Like, use my client-side code, call a server, get the server's response, use the server's response as data in whatever I wanted to do. And that model is a little bit oversimplified, actually, because your browser is running client-side executable code. And typical limitations in accessing a REST API are that your browser that's on one website cannot make a call to another website to get information. That's called cross-origin resource sharing. In other words, you're crossing to another origin. You're not at Kintone.com anymore. You're at, Google.com, and you're asking them to share resources with you. And that's typically prohibited. So if you try to do that, if you try to run your Kintone JavaScript code calling a server somewhere without, if that server is configured as it typically is, it won't let you do that. It'll throw you a CORS error. So let's give you an example. We're going to use the XKCD API for retrieving comic images. And what you'll see over here is we are typing in a URL. That's one of their REST API endpoints. We're going to fetch that URL, and then we're going to try to do something with it. And we are doing it from Google. And you'll see exactly like I'm saying, we cannot do that. We cannot be on website A and have our browser make some call to website B. The client is not allowed. And that's for a variety of security reasons. The one that comes to mind for me is that you don't want some kind of nefarious code on a website that you trust that's been hijacked, then hijacking your client and going somewhere else and doing some other stuff secretly. Something like that. Sounds like my computer. Yeah. So how do you go around that, especially if you're using a tool like Kintone? Well, Kintone basically creates something. It creates a proxy server, and what that means in English is you tell Kintone to make the call for you. Kintone acts like a server at a restaurant. You're not going straight to the kitchen to talk to the chef. There's a middleman who is taking your order and then going to the chef and making the making the call for you, and then giving the returning the response. So with Kintone, there is you can call REST APIs through a method called Kintone.proxy. And what it'll do is it'll make the exact call that you want, but it'll do it from a Kintone server. So server to server communication is totally fine. And then it'll return you, essentially the client, the answer that you want. What you need to know about Kintone proxy is it has these parameters. It takes in the API endpoint that you're looking for. It takes in the method. Are you making a GET request? Are you making a PUT request? Are you posting? It's going to take along any headers that you specify and any data that you specify. And then it'll return a promise. But if you put in the last two parameters, then it'll return the information as a callback. Deny, you're asking, oh, is it an Nginx server? What do you mean by that?
Well, you can set up Nginx to do a proxy server.
Yeah, great. So yeah, you could have Nginx basically make calls on your behalf to another server. Sure. But to clarify, it is not an Nginx server. Nginx is like essentially low-level software that runs on your server that allows it to handy way of setting up your server, basically the way that you want. VJ saying there's lots of ways to get around CORS. Absolutely. So let's take a look at an example over here. Okay, and you can feel free to take this code. If it's not available in the PDF, then you can grab this deck and try it by yourself. What we're doing over here is we're going to make a call to the XKCD URL, the one that we just tried from Google, but this time we're going to have Kintone proxy take care of that information. And when it does, then we want it to display the resulting comic. Is this the little Bobby Tables comic? Yes.
It is. It's my favorite one.
Oh, it's an excellent comic. For those of you who Heck, why don't we do this? Raise your hand if you've ever heard of XKCD. All right, great. Folks, if you have not heard of XKCD, I am delighted to inform you that there is a crunchy, nerdy webcomic that really scratches the itch. And there are like 1,000 of them. So if you ever want to burn a week, I'm not sorry that I've introduced it to you. For all the folks that raise your hand, thank you. Okay, so what you need to know about the way Kintone proxy works is it's going to return a promise object, and you can even use it with Internet Explorer. And it'll allow you to make your calls from the browser without being blocked by cores. Any questions so far? I like it. Good. We're asking questions in the process, so we get to these checkpoints and you guys don't have questions. I'm okay with that. All right, so let's talk about what we've done so far. Well, we introduced you to Kintone. It's a no-code, low-code platform. It's very, very useful if you're a developer and you want to build something quickly and then focus on like the more interesting parts of your project. Kintone allows you to do that. You can use it as a front end for a privileged class of users. You could actually use we haven't talked about this, but I do want to drop this in. You could use Kintone as a back end too. If you've got some other front page, some front end work that you're doing, some pages somewhere else, and you just need to like drop information in a database and pull information from that database with an open free API, you can use Kintone as a backend database. So it's very flexible. We talked about creating a Kintone app. It's very easy to spin up, and it is extremely configurable and customizable, especially if you're somebody who knows how to code. We displayed an AM chart on Kintone. We showed you how to upload JavaScript files, how to link to existing JavaScript files, and touched on how your JavaScript files can interact with data that's stored in your apps. And then we talked about how to make REST API calls from Kintone. Excuse me. Oh, I do them in sets of 7. Thank you, Will. So if you want to make REST API calls from Kintone, let's say you don't have a bunch of data on hand, but you want to pull it from some existing data set. The way that you do that is by using Kintone.proxy, and that'll have you bypass the cross-origin resource sharing errors, the CORS errors. Okay, so why would you want to use Kintone on your projects? You don't need to set up or maintain a server. You can easily create databases with the GUI so that you also can kind of hand wave the back end. If you were looking to do some work for a privileged group of users, you could also hand wave a lot of the front end and then just customize a lot of what's already there. The front end can utilize the database data, and you can call REST APIs from the Kintone front end to avoid cores. So here are some ideas for what you might want to do next. One thing that I touched on is, well, why don't we start with this? If you want to try out more visualization projects, there's a whole bunch of cool stuff that you can do with AM charts. You can link to different libraries. You can pull data from various other open APIs and remix it and just build something real quick. This could be very useful for your portfolio. Another thing is if you really wanted to get down and dirty with a fun project is like learn how to implement a Kanban view with Kintone. Almost entirely out of scope of what we've talked about today, but that could be a really fun project to work on. We also have things that are called plugins, which are basically like packaged customizations. So for users, remember, as a developer, you're in a privileged position where you can code, but we're typically, we are surrounded by people who don't know how to code. What a plugin does is it allows you to basically take this special customization that you've made and generalize it so that somebody who doesn't know how to code, somebody who's allergic to technology, can configure your customization without ever needing to look at textual coding interface. Just some ideas for you. If you want to take a look at various places to retrieve and store data from public APIs, here's a list of those public APIs. This is available on GitHub. I should star that. I'll do that after our session today. It's a great resource. And if you want to use Kintone as a backend and retrieve data via Kintone's REST API, just spin something up on Heroku. I say just spin something up on Heroku. For some of you, that's a project in and itself. So take that on as a project. Spin something up on Heroku, connect that to a Kintone database, and it looks like Will's got a really cool tutorial breaking down how to do that. If you are stuck, you have any challenges, there is a Kintone developer community forum. It's on the Kintone Developer Network. You can Google Kintone Developer Network, and also Genji, just like perfect timing, just dropped it in the chat. You can also hop onto Stack Overflow, which is, you know, everybody's favorite place to get tips on how to code. Okay, any questions? All right.
I got a question for
Yeah.
like the visualizations and stuff like that we can utilize and implement. So like this is like, since it's kind of like an automated process, right? You kind of just like set up like all the parameters in the sandbox, and then you could pretty much just hand it off to the client and they could log in, right? And they have access to tools right off the bat. Is that kind of how it is? Kind of like.
Go ahead.
Well, I guess I'm trying to just get that distinction, because like, I mean, the service seems pretty awesome. I kind of like how it's like all in one, encompassed, and you can kind of like get everything hooked together. Pretty simple.
Totally. So it depends on who your client is, right? If your client is a typical business user, you know, your coding is being done behind the scenes. Ultimately, they just want to, you know, have a tool that's going to make it easier for them to do their work. And so as a typical business user client, yeah, everything's like pretty easy and accessible. If you're a developer and you want to build something for your client, a lot of it's already done for you. You know, then you're building, you know, you're building piping, or you're making some UX changes, or maybe, you know, you're building a plugin, which you would involve some single page application. Let me rephrase that. Which would involve, forget what I just said. If you wanted to build,
that made sense though. That made sense what you said. It's kind of like just like a tool to use in the tool bag. It's just you know, something for us to pull out, and you know, makes things easy for us, like ready to go.
That's right. That's right. Look, you guys as coders, there are a lot of places where you can be focusing your time and attention, as some of us were talking about during the break, right? So, you know, do you want to focus your attention on like building a database from scratch? Yeah, there are certain times where you definitely want to do that. And there are also times where you don't. So you have Kintone as a tool to use it when you don't, you know? What if you just want to like spin up some charts and graphs, you want to mix them up with some data, you want to see that everything's working the way that you want. You want to do it in a lightweight database. Yeah, like Kintone's a great option for that. Let's say even you wanted to build a plugin that maybe you wanted to resell to our user base, right? You can go ahead and do that too, right? There's a lot of options for you.
Sweet.
So really, this is another place for you to play. Any other questions about Kintone, the tool? Cool. How about any questions about REST APIs, AM charts, client side versus server side, JavaScript? All right. Well then, I want to thank you for your participation. And we're gonna don't go anywhere, because I'm gonna turn it over to Christine. And before I do, I just want to say again, thank you to Genji, thank you to Will, thank you to Vijay and Christine for putting all this together. And thanks to viewers like you who have really made it a joy for us to, you know, just train the next generation and train folks who are the current generation and like up in their skill sets. So guys, like, thanks for making this an awesome call.